Haran had always believed that life was bigger than just existing, bigger than waking up, eating, and sleeping. He grew up hearing stories of men and women who stood up for justice, people who changed their world even when it cost them everything. Somewhere deep inside, he knew that was the kind of life he wanted to live, but his passion soon put him in the middle of a storm. In his country, there was a group of people constantly looked down on because of the tribe they came from. They were mocked, sidelined, and called names. Haran couldn't stay quiet about it. He spoke in gatherings, wrote articles, challenged policies. His voice began to rise above the noise, and people started listening. The people in power were not pleased. They saw him as a threat, a young man trying to disturb the order. They warned him. They called him in for meetings, smiled at him, and said, "You're young. Don't ruin your life over things you can't change." He listened, but he didn't stop. Then the threats began to grow louder. Anonymous notes slipped under his door, strange calls in the middle of the night. Friends who once stood by him started disappearing one by one. Still, Haran pressed on, until that one night. It was late. The street outside was silent. Then a sudden crash, the door burst open. Before he could move, men in black uniforms flooded his room. They didn't say much. They dragged him out, blindfolded him, threw him into a van, and drove off into the darkness. The next morning, the news spread. Haran had been arrested. Prison was not what he imagined. The walls smelled of rust and regret. The days felt like years. The guards barely spoke, except when they shouted. But even there, in that cold silence, Haran's fire refused to die. He started writing in small pieces of paper and smuggled them out through sympathetic guards. His words traveled farther than he could imagine. They reached schools, churches, marketplaces. His voice was alive again. Months turned into years, and when the world finally demanded his release, Haran walked out thinner, older, yet unbroken. Freedom didn't mean peace for Haran. The same men who jailed him still ruled. They watched him, mocked him, said, "Let's see what he'll do now." What he did changed everything. Haran didn't fight with fists or guns. He fought with influence. He began to travel, city to city, village to village, meeting young people like himself. He spoke to crowds under open skies, in classrooms, in market squares. His voice carried hope. His message carried power. Slowly, the movement grew, a wave that could no longer be ignored. When they shut down his rallies, people protested. When they silenced the media, the streets spoke. The old rulers panicked. Their threats no longer worked. And one day, the same crowd that once feared them rose with one voice, and the power that built its throne on discrimination fell apart. Years of endurance led to one defining moment. Haran, the boy who once slept on a cold prison floor, was now the man leading the nation. On the day he came into office, the air was still, as if the whole country was holding its breath. Haran looked out at the sea of faces before him, people from every tribe, every background, finally standing together. He smiled out of peace and fulfillment. The very first decree he signed wasn't one of revenge. It was one of restoration. He ended the discrimination, opened doors of opportunity, and gave a voice back to the people who were silenced for generations. That day, the world didn't just see a leader. They saw a man who proved that you don't have to be powerful to make a difference. You just need courage, wisdom, and faith that the truth you stand for will someday stand for you.